is almost identical to physical practice. They did a study where they had people practicing free throws. They had 3 groups. One group didn't do any practice. The other group physically practiced free throws. And the third group only imagined practicing the free throws. And there was no change in the group that didn't practice or do anything. And the group that physically practiced only had a 1% greater improvement than the group that visualized practicing. Because what happens is when you visualize repeatedly, you're actually forming new neural connections in your mind, just as if you're physically doing what you're visualizing. So again, it helps you achieve that goal. The other thing that the author talks about is he says that our brains are almost like Google. Like all you have to do is give yourself a goal, visualize it, focus on it, and figure out the actions you need to take. Your brain will actually help you get to your goal. We're basically goal-striving mechanisms. So you got to give yourself positive goals, obviously not negative ones, because if you're having negative thoughts, basically what you fear you attract. So Psycho-Cybernetics is a great book about improving your self-concept and your self-image so you can reach your goals. Now, another book is No Excuses by Brian Tracy. And this is a really good overall self-development book because the author, he covers lots of topics. He covers work ethic, he covers things like the expectancy principle and self-image. The expectancy principle just basically means that what you expect, you'll be able to manifest. He talks about a little bit about nutrition, basically 3 poisons to avoid, which is sugar, sodium, and flour, because those generally are not good for you. And also talks a little bit about relationships. So it's a really good overall self-development book that touches on a lot of topics. Another book is The Compound Effect. I only have it on audiobook. What The Compound Effect talks about is how little things that you do in your life over the long term, over the years, will have major effects on your life. So it could be the difference between having dessert every day versus not having dessert every day. You're not going to see any difference in a month or two, but over 5 years, the way your health and the way your body looks could be totally different if you have dessert versus don't have dessert. And it doesn't mean never have dessert, it just means don't have it every day. And same thing with an exercise routine, that after several years, your body will be in amazing condition if you're just consistent with the routine over time. And same thing with meditation, you'll just be a lot more centered and grounded over the years. So that's a great book to check out. Another book is The Education of Millionaires. This is a book by Daniel Ellsberg. And what this book talks about is a lot of the things that you're not taught in college or law school, that you should self-teach yourself. Again, self-development, relationships, personal growth, marketing. And that by studying these things, going to seminars, reading books, you'll have a wealthy life, not just a job where you're doing well. You'll excel at all areas of your life, but it requires self-education. You're not going to be taught this stuff in regular school. So that's a great book to check out. And then another one is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I don't have the time to get into all of the habits, but the most important one, according to the author, is first seek to understand. And this is very important for us as attorneys. We're trained to present our case, prove our point. That's great. For the courtroom, it's terrible for your relationships, especially intimate relationships. You want to understand where the other person is coming from, where your partner is coming from. You're not there to win the argument. You're there to understand, improve the relationship, increase both of your happiness. And so it's critical to see where the other person's coming from. And it doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but at least you have to understand where they're coming from and validate their feelings. The worst thing you can do as an attorney is to say, well, that's illogical. Never do that. Um, Spirituality. Now, to get into spirituality books, you don't necessarily need to be religious or anything like that. It's just for, you know, your own development and ways to better your life. The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, great book, read several times. And what that book is about is the author talks about how oftentimes we're stuck in our heads with incessant thoughts, repetitive thoughts. A lot of those thoughts happen to be negative. He also talks about how one of the things he says is you are not your mind. So people think they are their thoughts, but you're not your thoughts. You're behind the thoughts, what's interpreting the thoughts. So what the author also talks about is how oftentimes people are focused on the past. They're either regretting things that they didn't do or that they did wrong, or they're pining for the past because they think that the past was better than the present. The author also talks about how people are too focused on the future. They're anxious about what's going to happen in the future. They're always constantly planning. People can even be on vacation in a tropical location, laying out on the beach and thinking about, well, what's going to happen when I get back to school, or what's going to happen when I get back to work, or what are we going to do tonight? And you miss what's right in front of you by doing that, because all you ever have is the now. And so if you're able to be more present to the moment and dissociate from those things, colors are brighter, smells are more aromatic, you just really get the full juice out of life. Another book is The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And this is a short, simple book. And what the agreements are they are agreements that you make with yourself to have a better life. And the 4 agreements are: be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. So be impeccable with your word means don't BS people, be authentic, and also don't use the word against yourself. What he talks about is how in our own heads, the metaphor he gives is the judge and the victim. We're constantly judging each other, ourselves. And you can make a mistake, and it's good to learn from your mistakes, and you feel the pain of making the mistake. But what we do is we judge ourselves, so you can end up punishing yourself for a mistake 100 or even 1,000 times. The author says don't do that. Secondly, don't take anything personally. What the author explains is people are kind of in their own reality, their own worlds. They're kind of in a dream state. And so if somebody does something to you, you can't take it personally because it's about them. If they did something bad, there's obviously something wrong with them. You can't take it personally. The third thing is don't make assumptions. People oftentimes make assumptions about other people's motivations or about situations, and oftentimes those assumptions are wrong. So he talks about not making assumptions, and then lastly, he talks about always do your best. And with the caveat, always do your best under the circumstances. Obviously, your best when you're sick or you're injured is different than your best when you're healthy. But he says, always do your best, and then you won't have as many regrets in life, and you'll be more likely to succeed. Some relationship books. Again, like I said before, what makes you successful as a lawyer can actually hurt you in your personal relationships, especially intimate relationships. So, several books that, again, I wish I would have been exposed to a long time ago. First, the 5 Love Languages. Really great book. What this book talks about is how people have ways of how they express and feel loved that are so different that they're actually like different languages. And so there's 5 of these. There is affirmation, that's saying sweet things to your partner. I love you, I care about you, you're awesome, things like that. There is quality time, that is having experiences together, going on dates, going on vacations, going to museums, just doing things together. There is physical touch. It's pretty self-explanatory, like hugging, cuddling, other things. There is gifts, giving gifts. That's pretty self-explanatory as well. People feel loved by giving and receiving gifts. And it doesn't have to be something expensive. It could be a small token, like if your date says, you know, I really love animal crackers. And then the next date, you come and lo and behold, you have animal crackers, just a couple of bucks. It makes the person feel that you care about them and love them, if that's their primary love language. And the fifth one is acts of service. That's doing things for each other. So, you know, cooking for your partner, or mowing the lawn, or whatever it is, cleaning the house. There's people who feel loved when their partner does things for them. And so the issue is early on in relationships, people just do everything because you're infatuated and you don't even realize that you're doing everything. But over time, you kind of revert back to your primary love language. And the problems occur when your partner's love language is a different love language, because the metaphor the author uses is a love tank. He says if you're not being loved in your love language, over time, the love tank starts to deplete. And that's when there starts to be a problem in the relationship. So the key is find out your partner's love language. And that way, even if it's not your love language, you gotta go out your comfort zone and love your partner the way they want to be loved, and they can do the same for you, so you both stay happy with the relationship. Getting the Love You Want by Harville Hendrix. I have that one on audiobook. Another really great book. What this book talks about is how, you know, most people have some level of baggage, because it's just the nature of things when you've been in relationships and also from your childhood. And unfortunately in relationships, intimate relationships, eventually your partner will trigger those painful memories. And people actually exacerbate the pain, that their past pain with each other. And what this author talks about is to do the opposite, to find out what these issues are and to actually fully understand where your partner is coming from, and to help each other heal those past wounds instead of exacerbate them. So it's a totally different way of approaching a relationship. And next, The Way of the Superior Man by David Data. This book is geared more towards men, but both men and women should definitely read it. And it's a little bit woo-woo and spiritual, but what the author talks about is masculine and feminine energy. And all men and women have both. The difference is the proportion. The author, I don't know where he gets his statistics from, but he believes 80% of men and women are more primarily masculine or more primarily feminine, and that 10% are kind of neutral, kind of equally masculine and feminine, and then 10% are actually the opposite, like the man will be more feminine, the woman will be more masculine. But what the author talks about is, and he defines masculine energy, I'm probably murdering this, but because he's a lot more detailed, he defines masculine energy as being about purpose, drive, mission, breaking through barriers, and feminine energy as creativity, giving and receiving love. And again, men and women have both of these, but the point is to not beat each other up for masculine or feminine qualities, to understand those and how to get along better, understanding masculine and feminine polarity. Another book is Attached. I have this on audiobook. What this book talks about is the attachment styles that people have in relationships. There's three basic attachment styles. There's secure attachment style, there's avoidant, and there is anxious attachment style. And that secure attachment types can pretty much date anybody and be okay because they're secure. But anxious attachment types, they need a lot of reassurance in relationships, or they feel anxious when their partner has gone too long. And ironically, anxious attachment types tend to date avoidant attachment types. And avoidant attachment types, they kind of get freaked out when there's too much emotion, too much closeness, too much intimacy. So, very fascinating book. It explains how, to make a person of a certain attachment type that you're dating, to make them more comfortable in the relationship, and how to become just more secure overall in your attachment type. And one last relationship book, The Mastery of Love. This is also by Don Miguel Ruiz. And what this book is about accepting your partner as they are. And the metaphor the author uses is that he says personality types are so different that we're almost like different animal species. So if you're a cat person, don't date a horse person. If you're a dog person, don't date a cat person. Like, be with the kind of person that you resonate with. But once you are with that person, accept them for who they are, good and bad. A couple of quick books about financial management that I don't have. Even attorneys need this. It doesn't matter how much money you make if you're not saving any of that money. And what The Richest Man in Babylon talks about, one of the main points is to save at least 10% of your salary. And Mastering the Money Game, that's by Tony Robbins, takes it a step further. He says one of the best ways to save a minimum of 10%. And the crazy thing is, the younger you start doing this, you could end up being financially independent by 40 or 45. And then you can do whatever it is you want in your life. If you want to keep doing your job, you can, or you can do something else and never have to worry about money again. And the key is to automate it. Make it that automatically the money is deducted from your account and goes into some kind of investment, preferably an index fund. They found that index funds outperform 90+% of mutual funds. Index fund is just basically a fund that tracks the entire market, because over a long period of time, the market goes up about 8% a year, and that's the kind of compound interest that you want. A couple other things here, and then we'll take questions. Keep in mind that nutrition really affects your mood and health as well. So try and avoid sugar, especially corn syrup. Corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, basically poison, overwhelms your system, causes huge insulin spikes. Try and avoid processed foods. Most preservatives, what they are derivatives of ammonia and formaldehyde, embalming fluid. Call me crazy, I don't want to be embalmed until I'm dead. So try and avoid processed foods. If it's in a box, it's probably processed. Do consume healthy fats, protein, and try and get organic produce if you can possibly afford it. I know it's expensive. By healthy fats, what I'm talking about is grass-fed butter. Grass-fed beef has healthy fat, omega-3 from fish, and also avocados and olive oil. You've got to have healthy fat in your body. Low-fat diets, like I said before, total nonsense. They're not good for you. And try and have cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, kale, cauliflower, things like that. Those are anti-cancerous and will actually lower artificially raised estrogen. Plastics and other toxins actually artificially raise estrogen too high, which can cause long-term health problems. And those types of vegetables counteract that. As far as fruit to have, the best ones are apples and oranges because of the fiber and water content, and you don't get the huge insulin spikes. And also, I hesitate to say this, but watermelon and pomegranate are basically natural Viagra. People take Viagra even recreationally, very bad for your heart. Watermelon has an amino acid that's like Viagra, and pomegranate helps raise nitrous oxide in your body, which again is what Viagra does. Water, we're even going to talk about water. Try and have bottled water as much as possible, even in a glass. I know it's expensive, but you could get it in Whole Foods, because again, plastics have residues. They have what's called BPA, I think it's bisphenol A, and phthalates, and those cause health issues, artificially raise estrogen levels. But even plastic bottled water is better than tap water. Definitely don't have tap water. Tap water has chlorine, which kills off good bacteria in your system. And it also has fluoride, which is good for your teeth, and it's fine to brush your teeth with fluoride, but if you're drinking fluoride, fluoride is actually a neurotoxin. It causes calcification of the pineal gland, which affects your serotonin production. So try and avoid drinking tap water.
And if it doesn't say that, it still exists. Just like email
Um, Also, have an food allergy panel done at some point. There could be foods that you think are healthy that you're allergic to. Like, I'm allergic, believe it or not, to carrots, tomatoes, and potatoes. Like, I was shocked when I was told that. I thought there was some kind of mistake. But since I stopped eating those foods, I don't get food comas anymore. So definitely have a food allergy panel done at some point. And as far as maintaining your weight or losing weight, one of the huge keys is don't keep bad foods in your house. If it's not there, it's not sapping your willpower. Every time you walk by the cookies or the ice cream, you're sapping your willpower. You're actually lowering your blood sugar, and guess what those foods have? Sugar. So if you just don't keep them in the house, it makes it a lot easier to maintain your weight and lose weight. Because then, if you want something bad, you actually have to leave your house and make the effort to go get it. It makes a huge difference. And just try and eat more fruit and vegetables overall. Some vegetables can taste gross, but it takes about 2 weeks for your palate to adjust, and once it adjusts, that food tastes actually a lot better. And lastly, exercise. Like I said before, exercise is just as effective, if not more so, than many prescription medications to alter your mood, and it doesn't, long term it helps your health. Long term, we don't know what some of these medicines will do to you. Again, the key is to develop a habit, be consistent, do what you enjoy. If you don't like going to the gym, don't go to the gym. If you prefer to walk, walk. If you prefer to hike, hike. Do something that you like. If you don't like doing it, it makes it much harder to build a routine and a habit. But just be consistent with whatever it is that you do. And also make it easier for yourself. Like, let's say you like to jog, or even if you like to go to the gym, have your running shoes right there by your bed, so you can just slip them on right when you get out of bed. The easier you make it on yourself, the more likely it is to happen. And so overall, that's it. But the main thing that I want you to keep in mind, because again, there's a lot of stress and negativity that you have to deal with being an attorney. It's just part of the job. There are certain areas of law that's not as prevalent, but most areas of law, that is the case. There's a lot of negative BS you have to deal with, and it sucks. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And so the key is to work on yourself. And there's a great quote from Sean Stevenson. He's got severe birth defects. He's this little 3-foot tall man who goes around on a motorized wheelchair, but such an inspirational guy, and I recommend looking him up. And he says, when you learn to love yourself and to master your emotions, only then are you free. So that's what these books and these routines that I suggest you take on will help you do. So I hope you take those on, and glad to answer any questions.
So everything that you just talked about, I've read Think and Grow Rich. It's like the best book ever, guys. If you haven't read it, I agree with everything you're saying. I find that every day I come to law school, I have a pretty positive outlook. But I don't know about you guys, law school is like one of the most negative places I've ever been in my whole life. And from everybody's so competitive, and everybody's like, I've offered to help other people in my class, and other students have come up to me and said, well, you're competing against them. And I'm like, that doesn't mean that I can't help them, you know? And it's just, if you could, from your experience and everything you've gathered, give your law school self advice on how to handle it, what would you? I mean, I know that's what this all was, but.
Yeah. Well, the key, Stephen Covey talks about this, the key is to have win-win agreements, okay? The problem with law school is oftentimes because of the competitiveness, it's kind of a zero-sum game. You know, either I win, you lose. It doesn't have to be that way, because when you have a win-win solution, you both do better. And not just that, when you're working together instead of each other, against each other, it's kind of you know, an interdependent relationship, which can cause exponential growth and improvement for both of you. So that's the way you need to present it. That by being win-win, by working together on whatever it is you want to work on, we're both going to do much better than two minds are better than one. We're both going to end up doing much better than we would do on our own, because we each have individual blind spots. Your blind spots can be different than the other person's blind spots. So that's the way you need to present it, as, hey, this is a value proposition. We're both going to do better because of this. We don't need to always compete.
I wish you could speak to the entire law school.
Maybe some other time.
Maybe next year.
Maybe next year, yeah.
I guess I have one. Do you have any kind of tricks for, I mean, all of us we have finals coming up in the next couple weeks, so anything to do directly while studying to kind of keep stress low, or maybe when choosing between studying and, like how to ease that decision, I guess. I think you feel like, when we do anything about studying.
Yeah, what you got to try to do is combine things. So, let's say you got to study for a test and you're reading over your outlines. That's something we have to do. You read the darn outline over and over again so you can try and get it into your head. It'd be a lot easier if you had a chip or something. But, go on the treadmill or go on the stationary bike and multitask. Read your outline while you're working out. You're killing two birds with one stone. That's one of the big things I recommend. I also recommend taking lots of breaks. So what happens is, and I used to do this myself, I used to be a marathon studier. I would just go for hours, but then I would just be exhausted afterwards. I think sometimes it gets to a point of diminishing returns when you're not taking breaks. And so take more breaks and just mix in other things, like stuff that will relax you, a meditation session, or just a couple of yoga poses, or even watching something funny on YouTube, or spend 10-15 minutes watching a comedy just to lighten things up for you. So those are some things that you can do. Sure.
What time of day do you normally meditate?
Me, I do it first thing in the morning. The reason is because your day can get hectic and crazy, and sometimes when you're about to go to bed, you're just exhausted. You don't feel like meditating, and so for me, I like to do it first thing in the morning, because then I'm sure no matter what that I get it done. And if I have the energy, I'll do it before I go to sleep too. But ideally, if you could do both, that would be best, because what you're doing is you're relaxing yourself and making yourself more centered first thing in the morning, and also you're relaxing yourself so you'll have a good day, balanced day. And also before you go to sleep, and your mind's not racing as much, you sleep better. And another thing to note about meditation is brain studies, brain imaging actually show that it strengthens the left side of your prefrontal cortex. And what that does is that helps with emotional control, and it helps with impulse control. So again, very, very important for lawyers to have that developed.
Maybe we have time for one more question. And if not, then from HLS and Wilson, I want to thank you very much for a really awesome lunch seminar.
By the way, just a couple of things for follow-up resources. I recently started a YouTube channel. It's not under my real name because I don't want attorneys messing with me and protect my family's privacy. But you should definitely check it out. Subscribe. I put out videos about these types of topics. It's called. It's under the name Lev Graden, which first name is Lev, and last name is Graden, Graden. And also, if anybody has any follow-up questions or stuff that they didn't think of, I'm always happy to help out and provide resources that I know about. And so, let's see anywhere I can write it. But
The one of those names, right?
which one? This one?
No, not that one. I knew that's not
Right next to human trafficking.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I'll just write it up.